Okay, so we're going to be using watercolor paper for this project because we're going to be using watercolor paints. And watercolor paper is a little different because you can see, if you can see, one side is very textured. It's a little more rough. The other side is like our regular paper. It's very smooth. We want to paint on the textured side, the side where there's a little bit of bumps on it. Now, originally, this was a rectangle piece of paper. It was an 11-inch by 14-inch piece of paper. But for our project, we want a square canvas. So I cut it into an 11 by 11 square. And this little extra piece, we're actually not going to throw it away because we're going to use this to practice painting and getting comfortable painting on watercolor paper when we get to the watercolors. So I'm just going to put that aside for now, and we're going to set up our square paper. Now, just like Andy Warhol did, we want to create 4 equal squares on our square paper. So the easiest way to do that is to fold your paper in half. I'm going to line up my 2 corners, and I'm going to make a crease going down. Then I'm going to open it back up, and I'm then going to fold it the other way. Nice and gentle, because I don't want to make any extra folds where I don't need to. Line up the corners, and when you're happy with it, hold it down and fold it and make a crease. Okay? Then when you open it back up, you'll see that there's a very subtle line that shows where your 4 sections are going to be. Make sure the textured side is on top because that's what you're going to paint on, and flatten it out. Now we have a nice blank canvas to start our 4 different donuts. Now our water cups that we have in the art room are actually the perfect size to fit inside of one of these squares. So you're just going to take a pencil, hold this down, and lightly, really lightly, trace around each one of the cups to create your donut shape. And you're going to repeat that 4 times. My 4 donut shapes are all traced, and now I'm going to do 2 things. The first thing I want to do is I want to create the center of my donut. Now in real life, think about it. They are never a perfect circle on the inside or the outside. So we're going to adjust them a little bit. If you want to have a donut that has a hole inside, you're not going to make the center hole so large because donuts aren't actually that skinny, right? You want to make a hole inside that's sort of smaller, okay? Something like that. It does not have to be perfectly centered. That wouldn't be realistic, okay? Maybe you want to do a donut that actually doesn't have a hole in it, right? The ones that have custard inside. If you don't want a hole, leave it alone. That's how you're going to keep it. Another option, maybe I'll put one more center one here. Okay. Another option is maybe you actually want to show a bite taken out of your donut. So I think I'm going to leave this one solid. I'll do 3 more center pieces like this. Nice and lightly so you can adjust it if needed. But then maybe I want to make, let's do it right here. I think I'm going to make a little bite mark going through there, and then I'm going to erase the edge to make it look like someone bit right through the edge of the donut. So for the first section of my donuts, I'm going to start with what we call a value scale. And a value scale is actually only the shades of gray from white to black. So it can be really, really, really light gray or really, really, really dark gray. But this is going to teach us how to use watercolors correctly to make our donuts look 3D and stand out. So we're only going to use one color for this section. We're going to use black and we're going to use water. That's it. Okay, so I decided that I'm going to start with this bottom section, and you can choose any one that you want. That's totally up to you. I'm going to wet my brush because I obviously need water to activate my paint. Wipe it on the edge and wiggle it in my color. Now it might be a little hard to tell which one is black. Yep, that one's the black. So we want to make the shadow parts first, the darkest parts where light is not hitting your donut. So I'm going to just wiggle it a little extra, and I want to make sure that my paintbrush is saturated with the color, which means it has a lot of color on it and it's not super wet. That way, when I go to paint, you're going to see that is blue. Okay, let's try this again. That was clearly blue. So I'm just gonna wash off my brush. I probably should have tested this first. Let's see if this one is. Nope, that's purple. Let's see. I think that one maybe? Ta-da, we got it. So here's the black, no problem. So I'm gonna saturate my brush, get some extra paint on it, and I'm gonna focus on the inside of the outer edge of my donut. And I'm also gonna focus on the outside of the center hole. So once I do that, that's gonna kind of help me see where the shadow is gonna be on my donut. So now that my concentrated parts are finished, I'm gonna take water only on my brush. So I'm gonna get my brush totally clean and I'm gonna just get water. I'm not dipping it in a color. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start dragging some of my outer edge paint to the middle. And I'm gonna try to keep the inside lighter. So you'll see by not having any more paint on my brush, it's just dragging some of that darker paint toward the center, filling this all in with some nice light grays. And you even can leave some parts really just like white if you want to, or you can fill the whole thing in. It's up to you. And you'll go ahead and keep doing that, dragging in the paint from the outside toward the center. And it's gonna start to look like it's 3D, it's popping off the paper. If you need more water, just dip it in there and start dragging it back again toward the center. Now this is gonna be a lot easier if you want to build darkness onto it rather than taking paint away. But let's say you made a part too dark and you wanna lighten it up. What you're gonna do is get a clean brush, make sure there's no paint on it, make sure it's just water, and then you're gonna swipe it. And do you see how that kind of picks up some of the paint and now it's on my brush? You can repeat that until you're happy with the lightness or darkness of your donut. So once you're happy with it, you'll see that you want the shadow to be on the outside of the donut, and you want the highlights to be where light is reflecting off the donut. And by leaving these parts more white, it's just gonna make it look like light is hitting it more. Now the final touch of what you can do if you wanna exaggerate how 3D it looks, you can go back in with that saturated brush, that really dark color, and you're just gonna outline right along the edges of wherever you want it to look like it's a little more of a shadow than the other parts of the donut. And that's just gonna exaggerate it a little bit and add a little bit more depth to your picture. Now we're only gonna focus on the actual donuts first. We're not worrying about the background of each section because we need these to be totally dry. And then also at the end is gonna be a good part where we can look around and see which colors we wanna use to make our donut in each section stand out. So the next sections that we're gonna do are gonna be, one is warm colors, and another one is cool colors. So I'm gonna start out with my warm colored donut. And I'm gonna just rotate my paper a little bit because I find it easiest to work on the bottom right section. That's just because I paint with my right hand and then I'm not leaning on anything. But if you find something easier for you, you can rotate your paper to make it easier for you. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do this one with my warm colors, which means I can use any kinds of reds, oranges, yellows, anything that reminds me of things that are hot, like fire, or like the sun, things that are warm. Now, since I don't have a hole in this donut, I don't have to worry about outlining the center for this one because there's gonna be no shadow there. It's totally flat on the top. So I'm just gonna create that concentrated section of paint right around the inside of the border of my donut, like I did for the one that was just the gray scale. And this one, I think that I'm gonna do this, let's do this one, like this lighter orange color. So I'll go around and I'm gonna just start adding that dark saturated outside edge. And the nice thing about doing this with color is when we get to adding those extra shadows and extra highlights, maybe you want to use other colors in your group of colors. Now you noticed with this one, I did end up adding a little bit of orange to the outside to make it pop out just a little more and intensify those shadows. And then also another thing, if you want to put icing on your donut, and I'll do that for my next one, you can also do a different color to make the icing. And you'll repeat that same exact thing, just going from dark on the outside to lighter on the inside. But you do want to remember that we want to keep all warm colors here and all cool colors in one of the other ones. So think about that if you do want to put icing on it as well. Anything like that's little details like sprinkles or like icing swirls, things like that, don't worry about that yet because that's going to be the final step in this project. This is just painting the base color of your donut and icing if you want that to cover your donut too. Now, as I finish up my cool color donut, I'm just going in with that extra dark blue, and I'm adding just a couple of little shadow extra pieces to make it look a little darker on the edges. And if you feel like your brush is too wet, just either wipe it on the edge of your cup or you can get a paper towel too. And you don't have to worry so much about like those super clean outside lines because again, this is watercolors. It's not really meant to look so clean cut and perfect. If you want a clean line, you just have to make sure that this is super dry. So just let it dry for a couple minutes if you want it to give that nice little clean edge. And that'll make it look a little more crisp on the outside. And that will add a little extra nice shadow to it. Now our final color section, and this one is our new colors that we have never learned yet. These are called analogous colors, and like we talked about, they can be any three colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So it could be orange, yellow, green. It could be green, blue, purple. It could be purple, red, orange. They just have to be next to each other. So think about what you want to do for your final section. I already see I did greens and blues, and I did more of like a yellow orange here for my warm and cool colors. So I want to make this one different, and that's just my preference. I don't really want to have two that are the same next to each other. So I'm just going to think that through my head. Maybe I want this one to be more pinks and purples. That would be different. Maybe I can do something like blues and purples, maybe like darker blues because I don't have too many dark blues in there. Maybe I could do that. Another option, maybe I can do Reds and oranges. So now that all of the donuts are done, we are going to move on to the background. And the reason that we did the donuts first is because if we don't let those dry and then we went right to the background, that would be considered wet on wet, which means if we were to paint right along the edge, it would blend together and that crisp outline would disappear. So by letting all of these dry completely, then we can move to the background and it'll keep that crisp outline so it looks like the donut is popping out from the background. So the first one I'm gonna do is my grayscale, but because I have to use black for this, you can either go really, really light to really, really dark, but you do wanna make sure it's gonna make your donut stand out. So the only thing I'm not gonna do is pick a shade of gray that's along my edge, because otherwise it'll blend in with the background rather than pop out from it. So I think I'm gonna decide to do more of like a lighter to medium gray. So that means that I don't need a ton of color on my brush. I just need more of the water. So if I feel like it's too much color, just dip a little in the water and you're gonna start to blend out your background. Go nice and slow so that it goes right along the edge, up to the corners of the square, and fill in your space. So while I did that, you might have noticed that I was holding the paintbrush like a pencil, and that's gonna give me more control around those edges. You also can see here that it blended a little bit, and that's exactly what would happen if this donut was still wet, like I mentioned before. Now, if that does happen, that just means I went over the color a little bit more with too much water, so it's gonna spread out a little. If that happens, it's fine. Just get a dry brush. Try to get as much water off your brush as possible, and then you can kind of go along the edge and touch it up, okay? And it doesn't have to be so perfect. Maybe you want it to blend out a little to give it a different kind of look. So my grayscale section is done, and now I'm gonna do the same exact thing, and I'm gonna do that for my warm colors, my cool colors, and my analogous colors. So since this one is gonna be the warm colors, remember the warm colors are things that remind us of things that are hot, like the fire and the sun, things that are reds and oranges and yellows. You can do any version of reds, oranges, and yellows for your background, but remember, if you have mostly one of those colors for the donut, maybe pick something that's a little different. So I would not do like a medium orange for my background. It's just not gonna make it stand out. I might do something like red or a darker orange. Same goes for the cool colors. The cool colors remind us of things that are cold, right? Like ice and snow and water. So they're blues and greens and purples. So any of the colors that are not in your donut, you can do for your background to make it stand out. And same exact thing for the analogous colors, the 3 colors in a row on the color wheel. Pick something that'll make it stand out. Think before you paint. That's a huge part of this process so that you can envision what it's gonna look like before you actually put paint on your paper. Now the final step of our project, and this is the really fun part, is going to be adding all the fun details and toppings with paint markers. And we can add sprinkles, we could add drizzle, we could add any kind of topping that you want to add. So we've got a lot of different color of paint markers here, and I'm just gonna quickly remind you of how we are going to use these. Now, just a quick reminder that the top of a paint marker looks like a little sponge, and this whole piece is filled with paint. So remember, when you write with these, it is going to be wet, and we want to make sure that we don't smudge what we draw. It takes a couple of minutes to dry. Now, it should work fine because they've been used. However, if you need to reactivate it to get it to work again, make sure you click the cap and then shake it maybe 3 times, okay? Not more than that, because if you shake it more than that, when you take off the cap and you go to paint with it, all that ink is gonna spill out. So shake it 3 times and then try it. And if it doesn't work, close the cap and shake it 3 times again, and so on. So I'm gonna demonstrate a couple of different options for you. I think for this one, because it's very plain, I'm gonna make kind of like a drizzle here. I wanna pick a color that's gonna really show up. So let's do this darker one. And I'm gonna just go nice and slow and add any kind of drizzle that I'd like to put on here. You could do any shape, you could do any design. I'm gonna just do this kind of swirly design. So I decided with this one, I'm actually gonna do 2 things. The first thing I wanna do is I actually feel like I wanna outline my icing, and then I'm gonna add some sprinkles on there. So same thing, I'm gonna shake my paint marker a couple times, and then it should be activated and ready to go. Now, I'm not just going in with any color. I'm thinking strategically about what kind of colors I want. So for this one, I decided to do that purpley color because that's the opposite of yellow. That's a complementary color to yellow, and I really wanted it to stand out. So that's why I decided to go with purple. This one I actually decided to do mostly the cool colors because I wanted to keep it looking like a cool color donut. So there could be any reason for choosing the colors you do, but you want to make a reason, and you want to make your selection of colors really thoughtfully. So I'm going to go and do this next one, and I think I'm also going to do another kind of drizzle design, but this time I'm going to make it a little different because I have a hole in the middle. So I'm going to have to jump over the middle section to do my swirls. So like I already mentioned, I jumped over the hole, but I also realized that I had this bite here. So I cropped where my swirls would be as if I took a bite out of it. Now I'm gonna do my final one and touch up any final decorations that I'd like on all of the donuts and finish off my project. So just to show you up close, this is my final design for all of my donuts. They're all slightly different, and I chose different shapes for sprinkles. I did some icing on some sprinkles on others, and it's a fun little touch to the end of the project. So let's see what you guys come up with.